When an empath finally chooses peace over people's inner power. You know the exact weight of a room the second you walk through the door. The atmosphere hits your chest before your eyes even scan the faces. For years, you carried this invisible anchor, believing your singular duty was to steady the ship for everyone else. You absorbed the unspoken grief of friends, the jagged anger of strangers, and the quiet despair of the people you loved most. Your body morphed into a vault for emotions that never belonged to you. Notice how your shoulders ache at this very moment. That tension is not mere physical fatigue. It represents the residue of 1,000 silent battles you fought on behalf of broken people. You mastered the art of reading micro-expressions. You anticipated needs long before they were voiced, bending yourself into whatever shape the moment demanded to keep the peace. This hyper-awareness felt like a gift. In truth, it became a quiet, solitary prison. Society praises the relentless giver. People call you selfless. They applaud your endless capacity to understand, to forgive, and to hold space for their chaos. But they do not see the dark aftermath. They do not witness the silent collapse behind closed doors when the world stops demanding your energy and the solitude finally rushes in. In that heavy silence, your mind races without mercy. You dissect every conversation, wondering if you offered enough, said enough, or somehow failed to prevent someone else's discomfort. The boundary separating your pain from their pain vanished a lifetime ago. You thought love meant erosion. You believed that to care for another soul, you had to surrender a vital piece of your own foundation. People siphoned your vitality, and you confused their temporary relief with your lifelong purpose. Every time you anchored someone else's storm, you drifted further away from your own shore. The exhaustion you carry bypasses bone and muscle. It resides deep within the architecture of your nervous system. Your body hums with the residual static of 100 different frequencies, none of them yours. For so long, you equated goodness with sacrifice. You wore your empathy like a badge of honor, even as it bled you dry. But a subtle shift is stirring in the dark. The vault has reached its limit. The invisible anchor threatens to pull you under the waves for the final time. A profound, terrifying realization takes root in your mind. Your capacity to heal the world cannot demand your own destruction. This relentless exhaustion possesses a profound biological root. Your empathy is not merely a spiritual trait or a fleeting personality quirk. It represents a complex neurological survival strategy wired directly into the deepest centers of your brain. When you step into a tense room, your amygdala acts as a primal alarm system, scanning the environment for emotional danger. Most people filter out the subtle shifts in tone, micro-expressions, or tense posture. You absorb every fragment of data. Your brain perceives another person's anger or sadness as an immediate threat to your own physical safety, flooding your bloodstream with stress hormones to prepare for an impact that never truly arrives. Cortisol courses through your veins like a slow poison. Adrenaline tightens your jaw and knots your stomach. Your sympathetic nervous system remains locked in a perpetual state of fight or flight, constantly bracing for an invisible emotional blow. Over the years, this chronic activation has ravaged your physical reserves. You experience unexplained insomnia, sudden drops in energy, and a relentless low-level vibration of anxiety humming beneath your skin. The sheer biological cost of processing the world's pain defies measurement. Your nervous system functions like an engine revving past the red line, burning up the vital fuel required for your own survival while hauling the baggage of others. Consider the act of people-pleasing. Society frames this exhausting behavior as kindness. Science paints a much darker, more accurate picture. Placating a toxic partner or smoothing over a volatile friend constitutes a trauma response known as fawning. You bypass fighting or fleeing because your brain learned long ago that the safest route through chaos was to neutralize the threat. You disarm the predator by becoming exactly what they need you to be. This instinctual submission keeps the peace in the immediate moment, yet it systematically dismantles your sense of authentic self over the passing years. Your vagus nerve regulates your ability to feel secure and connected to the present moment. When you endure chronic emotional trespassing, this vital nerve loses its tone and resilience. You struggle to find true rest even when the physical environment surrounding you is perfectly calm. Your body forgets how to downshift from hypervigilance into deep recovery. The constant drip of cortisol damages the intricate architecture of your mind, clouding your memory and dulling your sharpest intuition. You become a hollow vessel vibrating with the residual energy of unresolved trauma that belongs to strangers. The fatigue you feel inside your bones is not a failure of human character. It serves as a desperate, echoing plea from your own biology. Your cells are screaming for a permanent ceasefire. Every skipped heartbeat and every bout of brain fog signals a physiological system on the verge of total collapse. You cannot sustain the immense weight of the collective human experience without shattering your own foundation. Recognizing this biological truth strips away the heavy layers of guilt. You are not selfish for needing distance from chaos. You are a living organism demanding its fundamental right to exist without constant assault. The time for serving as a human lightning rod has expired. Your nervous system requires immediate sanctuary. The journey toward sovereign power begins the moment you stop treating your body as a dumping ground for the world's dysregulation and start honoring the sacred boundaries of your own biology. It does not arrive with a thunderous roar. The breaking point rarely announces itself with shattered glass or a theatrical exit. Instead, it creeps in during a moment of profound, echoing stillness. You sit alone in your car after another draining encounter, the engine turned off, the world muffled outside the windshield. A sudden, chilling clarity washes over you. The well has finally run dry. You stare blankly at the dashboard. Your chest feels hollowed out, scraped clean by the relentless demands of the people you tried to save. For years, you traded your own vitality for their temporary comfort, believing the reservoir within you possessed infinite depth. The mathematics of your sacrifice no longer make sense. You gave them an ocean of grace, and they returned a handful of salt. This lopsided exchange cannot continue. This realization sparks a quiet, visceral rebellion in your nervous system. The familiar urge to fix, to soothe, and to absorb their chaos rises in your throat, but a new sensation immediately suffocates it. Apathy. A beautiful, protective, and necessary apathy settles over your weary bones. Your brain simply refuses to manufacture the energy required to care about their manufactured crises. The trauma bond snaps not with a violent bang, but with the fragile whispering sound of a heavy thread giving way. Examine the relationships that siphon your life force. Notice the parasitic nature of their affection. They love the version of you that requires no maintenance, the version that acts as a bottomless receptacle for their endless complaints. When you needed a harbor, their shores were always closed. This is the exact moment the grand illusion shatters. You understand that your chronic overgiving was never a cure for their pain. It served only as a crutch that kept them broken while ensuring you remained perpetually exhausted. Your amygdala stops flashing its warning signals for their emergencies. The artificial urgency they project no longer registers as a threat to your own equilibrium. You watch their drama unfold from a distance, detached and observing rather than diving into the turbulent water to rescue them. This detachment feels strange at first, cold and unfamiliar, yet it brings an undeniable wave of relief. The crushing weight of false responsibility slides off your shoulders, leaving a terrifying, magnificent lightness in its wake. Survival instinct violently overrides the fawning response. The biological mandate to protect your own organism surges through your veins, demanding a radical change in trajectory. You cannot drown yourself just to prove you are a loyal companion. The air in your lungs belongs strictly to you. The steady, rhythmic beating of your heart is not a metronome for their chaotic lives. A fierce sovereign boundary begins to take shape in the darkness of your mind. You feel the terrifying thrill of choosing your own survival for the very first time. Guilt attempts to claw its way back into your psyche, whispering viciously that you are abandoning those who rely on your strength. Let the guilt speak, but strip away its authority. You are not abandoning anyone. You are finally retrieving the discarded bleeding fragments of your own soul. The pursuit of external harmony has concluded. The era of uncompromising internal preservation has begun. Building a boundary feels like an act of treason to a chronically exhausted mind. You spent a lifetime tearing down your own fences to accommodate the sorrow of others. You learned early that surviving meant remaining accessible to everyone who needed a harbor. Now you must construct a radical new architecture of self-preservation from the ground up, placing the heavy bricks of your sovereignty exactly where people used to trespass. This construction demands a profound shift in your biological landscape. Your vagus nerve craves a fortress. It requires a secure perimeter to downshift your body from chaotic hypervigilance into the sacred territory of recovery. When you enforce a hard limit, you literally signal safety to your own nervous system. You tell your primitive brain that the endless barrage of external demands will no longer dictate your internal climate or steal your vital energy. Guilt will strike first. It always surfaces in the beginning. This deceptive emotion masquerades as your conscience whispering vicious lies about your newfound selfishness and lack of care. You must recognize this guilt for what it represents in the clinical light of psychology. It is merely the biological withdrawal symptom of a people-pleasing addiction, the fading echo of old survival programming that kept you chained to the emotional debts of everyone else. You feel terrible at first because your brain associates setting limits with abandonment, rejection, and immediate danger. Let the guilt burn through your system. Do not fight the uncomfortable heat. Stand firm in the fire of their disappointment while your biology recalibrates to a higher frequency of unapologetic self-respect. Saying no without offering a desperate apology or a long explanation acts as a potent neurological reset for your mind. The word itself drops like a heavy iron gate between your precious reserves of peace and their unchecked consumption. Toxic individuals will demand immediate access to your time. They will expect the old, pliable version of you to rush in and mend their fractured lives with your own hands. You must observe their demands without absorbing their artificial urgency. You are building an unshakable sanctuary for your own soul, a place where your empathy functions as a quiet beacon rather than a bleeding open wound. True boundaries do not punish other people for their dysfunction. They act as a vital, impenetrable shield for your own physiological peace. You begin to measure the actual cost of every interaction. You evaluate the precious currency of your attention before spending it on situations that yield nothing but profound fatigue. A beautiful, ruthless discernment takes root in your daily life. You stop attending arguments you were not invited to. You decline the chaotic invitations that make your chest tighten and your stomach churn with familiar dread. Your physical body becomes the ultimate compass for truth, navigating you away from toxic dynamics and guiding you toward quiet, sovereign spaces. The architecture of your new life requires unwavering structural integrity. You reinforce the walls of your perimeter with unapologetic self-trust. When the chronic takers push against the boundary lines searching for old, familiar cracks in your foundation, they find only solid, unyielding stone. You stop bending to fit their narratives. The impulse to break your own back to carry their burdens vanishes. You stand tall in the center of your own fortress, taking slow, rhythmic breaths, letting the restored vagal tone bring profound harmony to your weary flesh. This transition feels jarring at first. Silence replaces the constant static of other people's problems. You sit in your living room, unbothered by the notifications lighting up your phone, realizing that the world continues to spin even when you refuse to carry it. The architecture holds strong. The fortress keeps you safe, allowing the fragile, beautiful core of your true identity to finally emerge from the shadows. This marks the glorious shift from managing their endless expectations to mastering your own magnificent peace. When you lock the gates to your energy, the outside world will not applaud your newfound health. They will rebel. The individuals accustomed to your endless sacrifices will experience your rigid boundaries as a vicious personal attack. Psychologists call this boundary resistance, but in your body it feels like a sudden war. They relied on your lack of limits to sustain their own chaotic equilibrium, using you as a pressure valve for their unresolved trauma. Without you absorbing their shockwaves, their internal pressure builds to an agonizing pitch. Expect their messages to turn frigid or perhaps frantic. Watch as they deploy sophisticated guilt trips masked as genuine concern. They crave the old version of you. They want the person who bled on command so they could avoid facing their own festering wounds. Prepare yourself for the extinction burst. This psychological phenomenon occurs when a toxic dynamic escalates right before it dies, simply because you removed the reward of your attention. They will label you cold, arrogant, or selfish. They will weaponize your past generosity against your current boundaries, demanding to know where the accommodating friend went. You must stand unflinching in the face of their tantrums. Let them misjudge you. Their disappointment is not your biological responsibility, nor is their sudden discomfort a sign that you made the wrong choice. Then comes the inevitable fallout. A heavy, unfamiliar silence replaces the constant draining hum of their demands. This quietness feels terrifying in the beginning. You spent decades translating their noise into your sole purpose. Without a blazing crisis to extinguish, a cavernous, empty space opens up inside your daily routine. Your brain, wired for high-stakes emotional rescue, undergoes a literal chemical withdrawal from the chaos. You might catch your hands hovering over your phone, desperate to send a text to fix a problem or to bridge the painful gap. Resist this primal urge. The silence is not a punishment for your rebellion. It provides the sterile, essential environment required for your nervous system to heal the chronic inflammation of parasitic attachments. You must confront the quiet grief accompanying this liberation. Letting go of draining relationships hurts, even when those bonds actively dismantle your biology. You mourn the beautiful illusion of what you believed the connection represented. You grieve the crushing realization that their affection was always conditional, predicated entirely on your willingness to act as a human sponge. Tears will fall in the stillness of your bedroom. Let the salt water run. Crying releases trapped cortisol and flushes the residual static of their expectations from your flesh. This mourning period acts as a necessary biological purge. It clears out the cellular debris left behind by years of relentless emotional trespassing. Observe how this resistance reveals the unvarnished truth of your circle. The masks slip off, hitting the floor with a resonant thud. People who genuinely value your soul will honor the new architecture of your life, adjusting to your limits with grace and understanding. The ones who hurl accusations, play the victim, or vanish entirely never truly held you. You spent years holding them. They were merely ghosts feeding on the warmth of your empathy. Let the ghosts depart into the night. The fallout operates as a ruthless, magnificent filter, sweeping away the fragile transactional bonds. You stand alone amidst the debris of severed attachments, feeling the cool wind against your face, realizing you survived the collapse. The storm finally breaks. A profound, unfamiliar stillness settles into the marrow of your bones. You walk into a room, and for the first time in your life, you do not scan the perimeter for emotional shrapnel. Your shoulders drop away from your ears. Your jaw unclenches. The heavy, frantic static of other people's anxiety no longer dictates the rhythm of your own heart. This represents the biological reality of sovereign power. Your nervous system recognizes the permanent ceasefire. The relentless flood of cortisol stops poisoning your bloodstream, allowing the parasympathetic pathways to initiate a massive systemic repair. Your body remembers how to rest. Notice the steady, unbroken rhythm of your breathing today. The shallow, erratic gasps of chronic anxiety have faded into long, deliberate exhales. You experience the physical sensation of somatic grounding, feeling the solid floor beneath your feet instead of walking on the fragile eggshells of someone else's mood. Gravity anchors you to the present moment. You breathe in, and the air fills your lungs without the suffocating weight of false responsibility crushing your chest. This quiet rebirth feels magnificent. Your energy no longer bleeds out into a bottomless void. Instead, it pools within your own center, building a brilliant reservoir of vitality that belongs exclusively to you. You wake up with a clear mind. The mental fog dissipates, replaced by a sharp, uncompromising intuition that guides your choices with precision. You stop asking the world for permission to exist in a state of peace. Reclaiming your sovereignty requires no grand declarations. The shift happens in the quiet, mundane moments of your daily routine. You sip your morning coffee without anticipating a crisis. You let a phone ring without feeling a violent spike of adrenaline. The space you carved out through rigorous boundaries becomes a lush, fertile sanctuary for your own authentic identity to take root. Your physical body reclaims its rightful territory. The muscles in your neck unclench, releasing decades of stored defensive tension. You discover passions buried under years of chronic fawning. The silence, once a terrifying void, transforms into a canvas where you paint the vibrant colors of your own neglected desires. People notice the change. The vultures retreat, sensing the impenetrable armor of your new frequency. Meanwhile, individuals who vibrate at the same frequency of health and respect gravitate toward your steady light. You offer them empathy from a place of abundance rather than an empty, desperate need for validation. Your compassion remains intact. However, it now features an iron gate, and you hold the only key. You survived the crushing weight of their expectations. You emerged from the dark trenches of emotional burnout with your soul scarred, but undeniably sovereign. This magnificent peace acts as your ultimate victory. The invisible anchor lies rusting at the bottom of the sea. You sail forward, charting a course dictated solely by the compass of your own restored biology. This newfound peace is not a temporary shelter. It forms the permanent foundation of your biological reality. The outside world will continue to spin, bringing its inevitable storms and unpredictable tides. But you are no longer a fragile vessel tossed by the wind. Your vagus nerve rests in a state of profound, sustainable regulation. You possess the rare, unshakable capacity to witness the chaos of others without absorbing their frantic frequency into your own bloodstream. Notice the quiet resonance of this power. Your heart beats with steady, deliberate intent. You reclaimed the sanctuary of your own mind, forging an environment where authentic emotional intelligence thrives. The transition from chronic burnout to sovereign calm requires immense courage. You survived the brutal friction of letting go, and you emerged whole. Take a slow, grounding breath. Feel the solid earth supporting your weight. You paid a heavy toll to reach this quiet harbor, and the stillness belongs to you, alone. We understand the unique gravity of this transition at Velvet Energy. We know the silent battles fought to protect your own light. If you have crossed this threshold, or if you are currently standing in the fire of boundary resistance, share a fragment of your journey in the comments below. Your story might serve as the exact compass another weary traveler needs to find their own way home in the dark. Protect your peace, honor your biology, rest well, and keep your perimeter secure.